I ask the children to forgive me for dedicating this book to an adult. I have a very important reason: this adult is my best friend in the world. I have another reason: this adult who understands everything, even the books written for children. My third reason: this adult lives in France, where he is starving and freezing. He is in great need of comfort. If these reasons are not enough, then I would like to dedicate this book to this adult as a child. All grown-ups were once children. Unfortunately, only a very few adults remember this. So I'll change the dedication to leave on Wilt as a little boy. When I was only 6 years old, in a book about a primeval forest called True Stories, I saw a wonderful illustration of a boa constrictor devouring a large beast. On the top of the page was a copy of the painting. The book says, "These pythons swallow their prey whole without chewing it, and then they can't move anymore. They can no longer move, they digest this food in a long 6-month sleep." At the time, I was thinking a lot about my encounters in the jungle, so I also drew my first drawings with colored pencils. Drawings. My first number 1. It went like this: I showed this masterpiece of mine to the adults and I asked them if my drawing told them to be afraid. They replied, "What's so scary about a hat?" What I drew was not a hat, but a python digesting an elephant. So I drew the python's stomach again. Situation so that the adults could read it. These adults always need explanations. My number 2: the adults advised me to put aside the drawings of the python with its belly open or closed, and to focus on geography, history, arithmetic and grammar. And so, at the age of 6, I gave up the wonderful career of being a painter. The lack of success of my number 1 and number 2 works discouraged me. The adults, who couldn't understand anything on their own, had to keep explaining things to them. It was really tiresome for the children. I then had to choose another career, and I learned to fly planes and have flown almost all over the world. I've flown all over the world. Indeed, geography has helped me a lot. I can tell China from Arizona at a glance. If I could tell China from Arizona at a glance, which was very useful if I lost my way at night. In this way, I have had a lot of contact with many serious people in my life. I have been among grown-ups, lived for a long time. I have watched them carefully, but this has not made much of a difference to my opinion of them. It didn't change my opinion of them much. When I met an adult who seemed to have a slightly clearer head, I took out my number 1 piece of work that I had kept to test him. I wanted to know if he really had the ability to understand. But the answer was always, "It's a hat." I don't talk to him about pythons or primeval forests or stars or anything like that. I had to accommodate them by talking to them about bridge, golf, politics, ties and so on. So the adults were very happy to know a reasonable person like me. I lived this lonely life, without anyone I could really talk to, until 6 years ago when I had that breakdown in the Sahara Desert. There was that breakdown on the Sahara Desert. Something broke in my engine. At the time, as I had neither a mechanic nor a passenger, I tried to do this difficult repair job alone. It was a matter of life and death for me. Question of life and death. The water I had with me was only enough for a week. The first night I slept in the desert, far from the world. I was much lonelier than a shipwrecked man, crouched on a small raft in the middle of the sea. I was much lonelier than a shipwrecked man in the sea. And at dawn the next day, when a strange little voice woke me up, you can imagine my surprise. You can imagine how surprised I was. The little voice said, "Will you draw me a sheep, please?" "Ah, draw me a sheep." I stood up as if I had been struck by lightning. I rubbed my eyes vigorously and looked carefully. I looked carefully. I saw a very strange little fellow staring gravely at me. This is the best picture I have ever drawn of him since. It was the best portrait I had ever made of him. But, of course, my drawing was much inferior to what he looked like in person. This is not. It's not my fault. At the age of 6, the adults made me lose my nerve about my career as a painter, except for the open-bellied and closed-bellied pythons. I never learned to draw again, except for the open-bellied and closed-bellied python. My eyes widened in amazement at the sudden appearance of this little creature. You must not forget that I was thousands of miles away from people. The impression I got from this little fellow was that he did not look lost, nor did he look half as tired, hungry, thirsty or afraid. He didn't look like a child lost in the middle of a desert. When I was finally able to speak again in my surprise, I said to him, "Alas, what are you doing here?" But he repeated to me, as if he had something important to do, without panic, "Please, draw me a sheep." When something mysterious holds you down, you dare not disobey it. In this desert, in danger of death, despite the absurdity of such an act. I took out a piece of paper and a pen. But then I remembered that I had only studied geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar, and told the little man, somewhat unhappily, that I could not draw. He replied to me saying, "It doesn't matter, draw me a sheep." Since I had never drawn a sheep before, I gave him a redrawing of one of the only 2 drawings I could do, the one of a python with its belly closed. The python with its belly closed. No, no. I don't want a python, it has an elephant in its belly. I was dumbfounded at his words. He continued, "The python thing is too dangerous and the elephant takes up too much space. I live in a very small place and I need a sheep. Draw me a sheep." So I drew it for him. He looked at it intently and then said, "I don't want it, this sheep is already very sick. Draw me a new one." I drew it again. My friend laughed innocently and lovingly and politely refused, "Look, you're not drawing a little. It's a ram, with horns." So I drew a new one. This one was rejected again, as were the previous ones. "This one is too old. I want a sheep that will live a long time." I got impatient. I was in a hurry to have the engine serviced, so I sketched this picture and said to him hastily, "This is a box, and the sheep you want is in it." At this point I was very surprised to see this little judge of mine beaming with joy. He said, "That's exactly what I want. Did you say this sheep needs a lot of grass?" "Why do you ask?" "Because I have a very small space there. I drew you a very small lamb, and it's small enough to feed it." He moved his head closer to the painting. "It's not as small as you say, look. It's asleep." And that's how I met the little prince. It took me a long time to figure out where he came from. The little prince asked me a lot of questions, but he didn't seem to hear any of my questions. Gradually, some of the things he said overheard, I gradually found out where he came from. For example, when he first saw my plane, "I won't draw it because it's too complicated for me," he asked me, "What's this?" "It's not a plaything. It can fly. It's an aeroplane. It's my plane." I was so proud to tell him I could fly. So he said in amazement, "What? You fell out of the sky?" "Yes." I replied humbly. "Huh? That's hilarious." At this point the little prince let out a clear laugh. This displeased me. I demanded that others take seriously my misfortune. Then he said again, "So, you are from the sky too? What planet are you from?" Immediately, I vaguely discovered a slight clue to the secret of where he had come from, so I suddenly asked, "Have you come from another planet?" But he did not answer my question. He looked at my plane, nodded slightly, and then said, "No, you can't have come from very far away on this thing." With that, he fell into a long pause of thought. Then, pulling the lamb I had drawn out of his pocket, He looked at his baby with fascination. You can imagine how intrigued I was by this dark talk about other planets. So I tried my best to find out more about the mystery. Where do you come from, my little one? Where is your home? Where are you taking my little lamb? Where to? He pondered for a moment and then answered me, saying, It's a good thing I have that box you gave me to use as a house for the lamb at night. That's for sure. If you are obedient, I will draw you another rope to tie it up during the day. And add on a skewer. My suggestion seemed to disgust the little prince a little. Bolt it, what a strange idea. If you don't tether it and it runs around, then it will get lost. This friend of mine burst out laughing again. Where do you want it to run off to? Wherever. It keeps running. At this point, the little prince said solemnly, It doesn't matter, I'm very, very small there. Then he added, with a touch of sadness, It won't go far if it keeps going. Another important thing I learned was that the planet on which his old home was located was no bigger than a house. It didn't surprise me too much. This didn't surprise me too much. I knew that apart from the big-named planets, Earth, Jupiter, Mars and Venus, there were hundreds of other planets, some of them so small that they were hard to see with a telescope. When an astronomer discovers one of these stars, he gives it a number, calling it, for example, asteroid 325. I have it on good authority that the planet from which the little prince came is asteroid B612. It was only seen once in 1909 by a Turkish astronomer with a telescope. He gave an important demonstration of his discovery at an international congress of astronomers. But because of the clothes he was wearing, no one believed him then. That was the case with the adults. Fortunately, a Turkish dictator, for the sake of the reputation of asteroid B612, forced all his people to wear. In 1920, the astronomer dressed up in a very nice costume and made a new argument. This time all the people agreed with him. I give you these details about asteroid B612 and tell you its number, which is due to these grown-ups. These grown-ups just love numbers. When you tell the grown-ups about one of your new friends, they never ask you substantive questions. They never say, how does he sound? What kind of games does he like? Does he collect butterfly specimens? Instead, they ask you, how old is he? How many brothers does he have? How much does he weigh? How much does his father earn? They think that's how they know their friends. If you say to the adults, I saw a beautiful house made of rose-colored bricks, with geraniums in the windows and pigeons on the roof, they can't imagine how good it is. One must say to them, I saw a house worth 100,000 francs. Then they exclaim, what a beautiful house. If you say to them, the proof that the little prince exists is that he is very beautiful, that he smiles and wants a sheep. The fact that he wants a lamb is proof of his existence. They will surely shrug their shoulders and treat you like a child. Children. But if you say to them, the planet the little prince came from is asteroid B612, then they are so convinced that they won't ask a whole lot of questions to tangle with you. That's how they are. Children should be more generous with adults and not complain about them. Of course, for those of us who know how to live, we don't care about the numbers. I would really like to tell this story like I would love to start this story like a myth. I would love to say something like this. Once upon a time there was a little prince who lived on a planet about the size of his body, and he wished he had a friend. This would be true for someone who knows how to live. I don't like people to read my books lightly. I am in a sad mood when I tell these stories. My friend has been gone for 6 years with his lamb. The reason I have tried to describe him here is not to forget him. It's so sad to forget a friend. Not all people have ever had a friend. Besides, I could have become one of those adults who are only interested in numbers. And for that reason. That's why I bought a box of paints and some pencils. At my age, and with the exception of the 6-year-old who drew closed-bellied and open-bellied boa constrictors when I was 6, it's hard to start drawing again. It's a lot of work. Of course, I had to make the drawings as realistic as possible, but I wasn't sure myself. One is okay, the other is not. The size of the figures is a bit inaccurate. In this area, I drew the little prince a little too big in one place and a little too small in another. I wasn't sure about the color of his clothes either. So I fumbled around and tried this and that to get a rough idea. I probably got some important details. I may have made a mistake in some important details. I'll have to ask you to forgive me for that. Because this friend of mine never explains himself. He thinks I am like him. But, unfortunately, I can't see the lamb through the box. I am probably a bit like the adults. I must be getting old. Every day I learned something about the little prince's planet, his exodus and travels and other things. All of this was slowly gained by chance from various reactions. And so it was that on the 3rd day, I learned about the Baobab tragedy. This time it was again because of the sheep, and suddenly the little prince asked me as if he were very worried, saying, "Is it true that sheep eat small bushes?" "Yes, it's true." Ah, I am so happy. I didn't understand why it was so important that the sheep ate the shrubs. But then the little prince said, "So they eat baobabs too?" I said to the little prince that baobabs are not small bushes, but big trees as big as churches, and even if he brought back a herd of elephants, he would not be able to eat a baobab tree. The idea of a herd of elephants made the little prince laugh. "Well, we'll have to stack these elephants one on top of the other," he said with great insight. "Baobab trees start small before they grow up." Good. But why do you want to tell your sheep to eat the little baobab trees? He replied to me, "Alas, that goes without saying." It seemed like it was self-evident. But I myself had to make a great deal to figure this out myself. It turned out that on the little prince's planet, as on all other planets, there is good grass and bad grass, therefore. There are seeds of good grasses and seeds of poisonous grasses, but the seeds are invisible. They lie dormant in the soil until one of them suddenly wants to wake up, so it stretches itself out and begins to grow coyly towards the sun. A lovely little seedling emerges. If it is a radish or a rose seedling, let it grow freely. If it is a bad seedling, it should be pulled out as soon as it is identified. For on the little prince's planet, on the planet of the little prince, there are some very terrible seeds, the seeds of the baobab. In the soil there is a plague of them. And a baobab sapling, if you pull it out too late, you can never get rid of it. And it will take over the whole planet. Its roots can burrow through the planet, and if the planet is small and there are many baobabs, it will tear the whole planet apart. It's a matter of discipline. The little prince explained to me later. When you have finished freshening up in the morning, must carefully freshen up the planet, you must stipulate that you go and pluck the baobab saplings on time. When these saplings are small, is about the same as a rose sapling, and as soon as you can tell them apart, you must pluck it. This is it's very tedious work, but it's easy. One day he persuaded me to draw a nice picture with my heart so that the children of my hometown would have a deep impression. He also said to me, if one day they go on a trip, this will be it will be useful for them if they travel one day. Sometimes there is no harm in people putting off their work until later, but when it comes to But when it comes to things like pulling up baobab saplings, it's bound to cause havoc. I have come across a planet where a lazy guy lives. I met a planet where a lazy fellow lived, and he spared 3 saplings. So, following the young prince's instructions, I drew the planet. I don't like to speak in a Taoist. But the dangers of baobab trees are not well understood, and the dangers for people lost on an asteroid are very great. The danger to people lost on asteroids is so great that this time I rashly broke with my habit of not lecturing people. Convention. I said, "Children, beware of the baobabs." In order to alert my friends to this danger which they, like me, had been in contact with for a long time without realizing its danger, I took the trouble to draw. I have taken great pains to paint this picture. The lesson I am proposing is significant and the effort is well worth the effort. Why, you may ask, are none of the other paintings in this book as spectacular as this one? The answer is simple. I have tried to do better in other paintings, but have not succeeded. When I painted the baobab tree, there was an eagerness that motivated me. Thus, little prince, I grew to understand your melancholy life. For quite a long time in the past, your only pleasure was to watch the gentle evening scene of the setting sun. This new detail I learned on the morning of the 4th day. Morning. You said to me then, "I love watching the sunset. Let's go and watch a sunset. But we'll have to wait." Wait for what? For the sun to set. At first, you look surprised, then you laugh at your own confusion. You say to me, "I always thought I was in my home country." Indeed, as we all know, in America it is midday, in France it is sunset, and if you get to France within a minute to get to France you can see the sunset. It's a pity that France is so far away. And on an asteroid like yours, you just have to move your chair a few steps. That way you can see the sunset whenever you want. I've seen the sun set 43 times a day. After a while, you say, "You know, people always like sunsets when they're feeling very miserable. How can you be so miserable 43 times a day?" The little prince does not answer. On the 5th day, it was still the sheep that revealed to me the secret of the little prince's life. As if after pondering in silence after a long time, he suddenly asked me without thinking, "If a sheep eats small shrubs, does it also eat flowers?" "He eats whatever he comes across." "Even the flowers with thorns?" "Even the thorny ones." "So what's the use of thorns?" I didn't know what to say to that. At that moment I was busy trying to remove a screw from the engine that had been screwed in too tightly. I noticed that the machine seemed to be malfunctioning badly and that the water was running out, and I feared the worst. I was anxious. So what's the point of the prick? The little prince never lets up once he is asked a question. This damned screw annoyed me so much that I answered him casually. "The thorn? It's of no use, it's purely a poor representation of the flower." "Oh." But after a moment's silence, he said to me with a sense of discontent, "I don't believe it. Flowers are weak and simple, they always try to protect themselves and think that having thorns makes them to show their power." I was silent. All I could think of was that if this screw ever went against me again, I would hammer it out. The little prince came back to interrupt my thoughts. "And you think that flowers—" Forget it. I don't think anything. I'm answering you casually. I have serious things to do. He looked at me in surprise. Serious business? He looked at me with a hammer in my hand, my fingers smeared with oil, crouching over a machine that looked ugly to him. "You talk just like those grown-ups." I was a little embarrassed by this comment. But then he said pointedly and ruthlessly, "You can't tell anything apart, you mix everything together." He was really annoyed. Shaking his head, his blonde hair twitched in the wind. "I've been to a planet where a red-faced gentleman lives. He never smelt a flower. He had never looked at a star. He had never liked anyone. He had never done anything but settle accounts. All day long he says, as you do, 'I have serious business, I am a serious man.' This makes him arrogant. He's not even like a person, he's a mushroom." "A what?" "A mushroom." The young prince was so angry that he turned white. For millions of years, flowers have been making thorns, and for millions of years, sheep have still been eating flowers. To figure out why flowers go to all that trouble to make thorns for themselves that don't do anything, isn't that the decent thing to do? Is the sheep and flowers are not important in the war between them? Isn't it more important than the accounts of that big fat red-faced gentleman? If I knew a flower that was the only flower in the world, that was only on my planet and nowhere else, and a little sheep hooligan just ruins it all at once, isn't that important?" His face reddened with anger, then he continued. "If someone falls in love with a flower that is unique among these billions of stars, when he looks at them, that is enough to make him happy. He can say to himself, 'My flower is in one of the stars,' and he can say to himself, 'My flower is in one of the stars.' One of the stars, but if the sheep ate the flower, it would be to him as if all the stars had gone out at once. All the stars would be extinguished at once. Doesn't it matter?" He could say no more and suddenly sobbed uncontrollably. Night had fallen. I put down the tools in my hands. I left the hammer, the screw, the hunger, the thirst, the death, all behind me. On my planet, on Earth there is a little prince in need of comfort. I took him in my arms. I rocked him and said to him, "The flower you love is not in danger. I'll draw a cover for your lamb. I'll draw an armor for your flower." I didn't quite know what to say. I feel so clumsy. I don't know how to. I don't know how to reach him, how to enter his realm again. Alas, what a mystery is the world of tears. I soon learned more about this flower. On the little prince's planet, there used to grow some very simple flowers with only one layer of petals. These flowers were very small, didn't take up any space and never bothered anyone. They never bothered anyone. They opened in the morning in the grass and faded in the evening. A seed comes from somewhere. Suddenly one day this seed sprouted. The little prince watched this unusual seedling with particular care. This plaything might be a new kind of baobab. But the seedling soon stopped growing and began to produce a flower. Seeing a very, very large bud growing on this seedling, the little prince felt that from this bud, from which a miracle must appear. The flower, however, hid in its green room and spent a long time. Dress herself. She chose her future colors, with care, decorated them slowly, matching her petals one by one. She does not want to be wrinkled as soon as she is born, like the yucca. She wanted to come into the world with a gloriously beautiful. She wants to come into the world with a radiant beauty. Yes, she is very fetching. She spends many, many days in her fairy-like makeup. Then, one morning, just as the sun was rising, she opened up. She had done such a long and delicate job of preparation, but she yawned and said, "I've just woken up, I'm sorry, but my hair is still in a mess." The young prince could no longer contain his admiration. "How beautiful you are! How beautiful you are!" And the flower said, "Yes. Yes, I was born at the same time as the sun. The little prince could see that the flower was not very modest, but she was indeed beautiful. She then said, "It is time for breakfast, so please think of preparing some for me too." The little prince was a little embarrassed, so he took a spray can and drew a jug of cool, clear water and watered the flower. And so the flower tormented the little prince with her somewhat sensitive and suspicious vanity. For example, one day she told the little prince about the 4 thorns growing on her body. The tiger, let it come with its claws open. The little prince contradicted her, "There are no tigers on my planet and, besides, tigers don't eat grass." The flower whispered, "I am not grass. I'm so sorry. I'm not afraid of any tigers, but I hate through the wind." "You don't have a screen?" The little prince mused, "Hate windbreaks, that's bad luck for a plant, this flower is. It's not very well served. You have to keep me safe at night. It's too cold in your place. It's not good to live here, where I used to live." Place? But she didn't say any more. She had come as a seed. She had never seen any other world. She called people. Find that she was putting together such a not very clever lie, and she coughed a little in shame. This one of her trick was to put the young prince in the position of having a fault, and she said, "Where is the screen? I'm going to get it." But what you just said was. So the flower let go of her voice and coughed a few times, still trying to make the little prince regret his transgression. Although the young prince had sincerely liked the flower, this came to make him immediately suspicious of her. The young prince was suspicious of the flower. The little prince took some irrelevant words too seriously and ended up distressing himself. One day he told me, "I shouldn't have listened to her, I should never have listened to the flowers. Just look at the flower and smell it. The flower that I have makes my planet smell good, but I don't enjoy it. About the old tiger's paw, which should make me sympathetic, annoys me instead." He also told me, "I didn't know anything then. I should have judged her by her actions, not by her words. She made my life so colorful that I should never have left her and run away. I should have guessed the warmth hidden behind her loving gestures." How contradictory flowers are. I was too young to know how to love her. I think the little prince probably took advantage of the migration of a flock of migrating birds to run away. On the morning of his departure, he packed up his planet and cleaned out the active volcanoes on it. He had two active volcanoes, so it was easy to heat up breakfast in the morning. He also had an extinct volcano, which he cleaned up as well. He thinks maybe it will still be active. Once they were cleaned up, they could burn slowly and regularly without suddenly. The volcano is like a chimney. Volcanic eruptions are like flames in a chimney. Of course, on our planet we are too small to clean volcanoes, so they cause us lots and lots of trouble. The little prince also pulled up the last few remaining baobab saplings. He was a bit sad. He thought he would never come back. On this day, the household chores made him feel especially close. When he watered the flowers for the last time, he was ready to treasure her. He found himself crying out. "Goodbye," he said to the flower. But the flower did not answer him. "Goodbye." He said it again. The flower coughed for a while. But it wasn't from a cold. She finally said to him, "I was so stupid on the side. I ask you to forgive me. I hope you will be happy." He was surprised that the flower did not complain to him. He held up the hood and stood there at a loss for words. He could not understand how she could be so gentle and quiet. "Indeed, I love you," Blossom said to him, But through no fault of mine did you pay any attention at all. It does not matter in the slightest. Still, you are just as stupid as I am. I hope you will be happy in the future. Put the hood aside. Go on, I don't need it anymore. What if the wind comes? My cold isn't so bad, the cool night air is good for me. I'm a flower. What if there are insects and beasts? Midline horizontal ellipsis dot. If I want to meet butterflies, I can't stand 2 or 3 looper. They say it's beautiful. Otherwise, who else would come to see me? You'll have to go far away. As for big animals, I'm not afraid of them, I have claws. So she innocently showed her 4 spines, and then added, Stop dawdling so much. It's annoying. Since you have decided to leave here, go away. She was afraid that the little prince would see her crying. She was a very proud flower. There are several other asteroids in the nearby universe, including 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, and 330. He started visiting these planets to find something to do there and to learn. On the first planet there was a king. The king was dressed in a great gown made of fuchsia and black flowers on a white background. He was sitting on a very simple but majestic throne. When he saw the little prince, he cried out, "Ah, here comes a subject." The little prince pondered, how can he know me when he has never seen me before? Little did he know that in the eyes of those kings, the world was very simple, all people were subjects. The king was very proud that he had finally become king of someone, and he said to the little prince, "Come closer, so that I can have a good look at you." The little prince looked around and tried to find a place to sit down, but the whole planet was filled with the king's magnificent white and black. The whole planet was filled up with the king's magnificent white and black leather robe. He had to stand there, but because he was tired, he yawned. The king said to him, "It is against etiquette to yawn in the presence of a king. I forbid you to yawn." The young prince said in shame, "I just can't help it, I have traveled a long way to get here and I haven't slept yet." The king said, "Well, then, I command you to yawn. I have not seen anyone yawn for years. Yawning is a novelty to me. Go on, yawn again." "That's an order. That makes me a little nervous." "I can't yawn," said the little prince, blushing. Yes." The king replied, "Then I order you to yawn sometimes and sometimes." He muttered, showing a little annoyance. For the main thing the king wanted was to keep his majesty respected. He could not tolerate disobedience to his orders. He was an absolute monarch. But he was kind and he gave orders with good sense. He often said, "If I tell a general to become a seabird and the general disobeys my orders, then it would not be the general's fault, but mine." The young prince tried coyly, "May I sit down?" "I command you to sit down." The king replied as he solemnly moved the lapels of his white and black leather robe. And moved it a little. But the young prince felt strange. What was the king ruling over such a small planet? He said to the king, "Your Majesty, forgive me, I want to ask you." The king hastened to snatch up the question, "I command you to ask me." "Your Majesty, what do you rule over?" The king said very simply, "I rule over everything." "Everything?" The king gently pointed his finger at his planet and the other planets, and all the stars. The little prince said, "Rule over all this?" "Rule over all this." It turned out that he was not only an absolute monarch, but the monarch of the whole universe. "So, do the stars obey you?" Then of course, the king said to him, "They must obey at once. I am not allowed to be undisciplined." Such power made the young prince marvel. If he had such power, then, in one day, he would not just see the sun set 43 times a day, but could see it 72 times, or even 100 times, or 200 times, and there would be no need to move his chair. As he thought of his little abandoned planet and felt a little sad, he boldly made a request to the king. "I want to see the sunset, please order the sun to set." The king said, "If I order a general to fly like a butterfly from this flower to that flower, or if I order a general to fly like a butterfly from this flower to that flower, or to write a tragic play or to become a seabird, and if the general does not carry out the order, then he is wrong. If the general does not carry out the order, is he wrong or am I wrong? Then of course it is your fault." The young prince replied in the affirmative. "Not at all," continued the king, "that what is asked of each man should be all that they can do. The authority should be based first and foremost on reason. If you order your people to throw themselves into the sea, they must rise up. They must rise up in revolution. My orders are reasonable, so I have the right to make people obey." "And what about the sunset I proposed?" Once the young prince had asked a question, he never forgot it. Once the young prince had asked a question, he did not forget it. "The sunset? You will see it. I must have the sunset, but according to the science of my rule, I shall have to wait until the conditions are right." The young prince asked, "When will that be?" Before answering, the king first flipped through a thick calendar and said slowly on his lips, "Well, sunset is about at 7:40 o'clock tonight. You will see that my orders will certainly be obeyed." The little prince yawned again. He regretted not seeing the sunset. A little bored, he said to the king, "There is no need for me to stay here any longer. I am leaving." The king, who was so proud of himself because he had just had a subject, said, "Don't go, don't go. I appoint you as a minister." "What minister?" "Well, the minister of justice." "But there is no one here to judge." "It's hard to say," said the king. "I'm very old, and my place is small, and there's no place to put a royal carriage. Besides, I get tired when I walk. Therefore, I have not yet toured my kingdom." "Oh, but I have seen it," said the young prince, and looked over to the other side of the planet. There was no one there either. "Then judge thyself," replied the king. "That's the hardest thing of all. Judging yourself. It is much harder than judging others. If you can judge yourself well, you are a truly wise man." "Me? I can judge myself in any place. There is no need for me to stay here." The king said again, Well. I think there is an old rat on my planet. At night, I hear the sound of it. You can judge it and condemn it to death from time to time. So its life depends on your sentence. But yes, you must use this rat with moderation and pardon it after each sentence, for it is the only one. But I don't want to be sentenced to death, and I think I should go anyway." The little prince replied, "No." The king said. But the young prince, having finished preparing, did not want to upset the old monarch and said, "If your majesty wants to be obeyed without compromise, you can give me a reasonable order. You could order me, for example, to leave in 1 minute. I think that condition is right midline horizontal ellipsis." The king answered nothing. At first, the young prince hesitated a little, then sighed and left. "I am sending you to be my ambassador." The king shouted hastily. The king looked very authoritative. The young prince said to himself on his journey, "These lords are strange." The second planet is inhabited by a vain lover of vanity. Hoo! A man who worships me has come to visit. This vain man shouted from afar as soon as he saw the little prince. He shouted from a distance. In the eyes of those who love vanity, everyone else becomes their admirer. Hello, the little prince said. Your hat is very strange. It's for greeting people, replied the vanity lover, when people cheer me. I greet them with my hat. Unfortunately, not a single person has passed by. The little prince did not understand what he meant. Saying, huh? Is that so? The vain man suggested to the little prince, you use one hand to clap the other. And the little prince clapped his hands. The vanity lover then humbly raised his hat in salute to the little prince. The young prince thought to himself, this is more interesting than visiting that king. So he clapped his hands again. The vain man raised his hat again to greet him. The young prince did this for 5 minutes, after which he grew a little tired of this monotonous trick and said, what shall I do to make your hat fall off? But this time the vanity lover could not hear him, for anyone who loves vanity hears only words of praise. He asked the little prince, do you really admire me? What do you mean by admiration? Admiration means admitting that I am the most beautiful person on the planet, the best dressed, the richest, the most intelligent. But you are the only person on your planet. Let me be happy, please come and admire me anyway. The little prince shrugged his shoulders gently and said, I admire you, but what could possibly make you so interested in? So the little prince went away. On his way, the little prince said to himself, these lords, they must be very eccentric. The next planet the young prince visits is inhabited by an alcoholic. The visit was very short, but it made. The little prince was very sad. What are you doing? The little prince asked the drunkard, who was sitting silently with a pile of wine. Bottles, some filled with wine and some empty. I'm drinking, he replied in a somber and melancholy voice. Why do you drink? The young prince asked. To forget, the drunkard replied. The young prince had taken some pity on the drunkard. He asked, to forget what? The drunkard hung his head and confessed, to forget my shame. What are you ashamed of? The young prince was eager to rescue him. I am ashamed that I drink, the drunkard said, and then never spoke again. The little prince left perplexed. During the journey he said to himself, these grown-ups do scream strange. The fourth planet is the planet of an industrialist. This man was so busy that when the young prince arrived, he didn't even look up. The little prince said to him, hello. Your cigarette is out. 3 plus 2 equals 5. 5 plus 7 equals 12. 12 plus 3 equals 15. Hello. 15 plus 7. 22. 22 plus 6, 28. There's no time to light it up again. 26 plus 5, 31. Out. Out. That's a total of 562,270,311. 500 million what? Huh? You're still here? 510 million. I don't know what it is anymore. I've got a lot of work. I'm very serious, and I never have time for small talk. 2 plus 5 makes 7. 501 million what? The little prince repeated the question. Once he had asked a question. He never gave up. The industrialist looked up and said, in the 54 years I've lived on this planet, I've only been disturbed 3 times. The first time was 22 years ago, when a golden tortoise came from nowhere to disturb me. It made a terrible noise and caused me to make 4 mistakes in one account. The second time, 11 years ago, was an attack of rheumatism, caused by my lack of exercise. I don't have the time to loiter. I'm a serious person. Now, this is the third time. My calculations came out to 500 million. A million. A few million what? The industrialist, knowing that it was hopeless to have peace, said. A few million of the little things that sometimes appear in the sky. Flies? No, it's something small and shiny. Are they bees? No, little golden things, little things that call the lazy bastards to their whims. I'm a strict man. I don't have time for nonsense. Ah, are they stars? That's right, the stars. What are you going to do with the 500 million stars? 562,731 stars. I am serious, man, I am very precise. What are you doing with these stars? What do I want it for? Yes. Nothing. They all belong to me. The stars belong to you? Yes. But I've seen a king who. Kings don't possess, they just rule. It's not the same thing. What's the use of having all these stars? To be rich enough to buy other stars, if someone finds other stars. The little prince said to himself, this man thinks a bit like that drunkard. But then he asked some more questions. How can you possess the stars? Then who do you think owns the stars? The industrialist unhappily contradicted the young prince. I don't know, they don't belong to anyone. Then they are mine, for it was I who first thought of the matter. Will that do? Then of course. If you find a diamond that has no owner, then that diamond belongs to you. When you find an island that has no owner, then that island is yours. When you first come up with a solution, you go and get a patent for it, then that solution belongs to you. Since no one before me has ever thought to take possession of the stars, then I will take possession of the stars. That's true. But what are you going to do with them? The little prince said. I manage the stars. I count them over and over again. It is a difficult thing. But I am a serious man. Still not satisfied, the little prince said. For me, if I had a scarf, I could use it around my neck and be able to take it. If I had a flower, I could pluck my flower and take it away. But you cannot pluck these stars. I can't pick them, but I can put them in the bank. What does that mean? It means that I write the number of stars on a little piece of paper and lock the piece of paper in a drawer. And that's all there is to it? That will do. The little prince thought, that's funny. It's quite poetic, but it's not really a serious thing. The little prince had a very different view of what was serious than the adults. He went on to say, I have a flower, and I water her every day. I also have 3 volcanoes, and I clean them all every week. I clean them all every week. Even the dead volcano. Who knows if it will come back to life? I have volcanoes and flowers, which is good for my volcanoes and flowers, which is good for my volcanoes and good for my flowers. But you are no use to the stars. The industrialist was speechless with his mouth open. So the little prince went away. During the journey, the little prince simply said to himself, these grown-ups are so strange. The 5th planet is very strange, being the smallest of these stars. There is just enough room on the planet for a street lamp and a man who lights it. The young prince could not explain why a street lamp and a man lighting a street lamp on this planet, which was situated in a corner of the sky and had neither houses nor inhabitants, were needed. On a planet with no houses or inhabitants, what would be the use of a street lamp and a man to light it? But he thought to himself, perhaps this man is not in his right mind. But he is more than a king, more than that vanity-loving. The industrialist and the drunkard, but better. At least his work has some meaning. When he lit his. When he lit his street lamp, it was as if he had added a star or a flower. When he extinguishes the lamp, it is as if he has put the star or flower to sleep. When he puts out a street light, it is as if he has put a star or a flower to sleep. It's a wonderful job, just really useful. As soon as the little prince arrived on the planet, he greeted the man who lit the streetlights with respect. Good morning. Why did you just put out the streetlight? Good morning. It was an order. The lighter replied. What was the order? It's to put out my street light. Good evening. So he lit the street lamp again. Then why have you lit it again? It was an order. The man who lit the lamp replied. I don't understand. The little prince said. There is nothing to understand. An order is an order. The one who lit the lamp replied. Good morning. So he extinguished the street lamp again. Then he took a handkerchief with a red chevron on it and wiped his forehead. I'm in a terrible profession. It used to be fair enough, lights out in the morning, lights up at night, and the rest of the time I rested during the day and I slept at night. So, the order changed, did it? The man who lit the lamp said, the orders haven't changed, but that's the trouble. The planet is turning faster and faster every year, and the order hasn't changed. The planet is spinning faster every year, and the order hasn't changed. And what happened? The little prince asked. The result is that it is now going round every minute and I don't even have a second's rest. Every minute I have to light the lamp once and put it out once. That's funny, you only have a minute long here every day? Not interesting at all, said the lighter, we've both been talking together for a month. A month. A month? Yes. 30 minutes. 30 days. Good evening. So he lit his street lamp again. The little prince looked at him, and he liked the fact that the lamplighter was so faithful to his orders. At that moment he remembered that he himself had moved from front of his chair in search of the sunset. He was eager to help his friend. I tell you, I know a way to make you rest, and you can rest whenever you want. I always want to rest. The lamplighter said. For a man can be faithful and lazy at the same time. The little prince went on to say. This planet of yours is so small that you can go around it in 3 steps. You have only to go slowly and you can. Always in the light of the sun, and when you want to rest, you go like this. Then how long you want the day to be it is as long as you want it to be. That won't help me much, all I like in life is to sleep. The lamplighter said. That's unlucky. The little prince said. Unlucky. The lamplighter said. Good morning. So he put out the street lamp again. The little prince said to himself as he continued his journey onward. This man must be despised by all those other people, kings, vanity lovers, drunkards, industrialists, etc. He must be despised by all those other people, kings, vanities, drunkards, industrialists. But he is the only one who does not make me feel ridiculous. This is probably because he is concerned with other things. And not himself. He sighed regretfully and said to himself. This would have been the only person I could have made friends with. But his planet is really too small for 2 people. For 2 people? What the little prince didn't have the courage to admit was that he was attached to this marvelous star, especially because there are 1,440 sunsets every 24 hours. The 6th planet is 10 times larger. On it lived an old gentleman who was writing a large book. Look! Here comes an explorer. The old gentleman called out when he saw the little prince. The little prince sat down at the table, a little out of breath. how far he had run. "Where have you come from?" the old gentleman asked the little prince. "What is this big book? What are you doing here?" the little prince asked. "I am a geographer," the old gentleman replied. "What is a geographer?" A geographer is a kind of scholar who knows where there are seas and oceans, rivers, cities, mountains, and deserts. "That's interesting," the young prince said. "That's a real kind of trade." He looked around. Looked at the geographer's planet. He had never seen a planet so magnificent. "What a beautiful planet you have. Are there any oceans on it?" "I can't know," the geographer said. "Ah!" The young prince was greatly disappointed. "Well, what about mountains?" "That, I can't know," the geographer said. "Well, are there cities, rivers, deserts?" "That, too, I cannot know," the geographer said. "But you are still a geographer." "Not bad at all," said the geographer, "but I am not a scout. I don't have a single scout under me. I have none." Geographers don't count cities, rivers, mountains, oceans, deserts. Geographers are important and he can't run around. He can't leave his office. But he can receive spotters in his office. He asks the spotters and writes down their recollections. If he finds the recollections of one of the spotters interesting, then the geographer makes an inquiry into the character of that scout. And why is that? Because an explorer who tells lies can have disastrous consequences for a geography book. Likewise, a scout who is too fond of a scout who drinks is the same. And why is that? The young prince said. Because a drunken man sees one as two, then the geographer will see only one mountain in the place as two mountains. I know a man who is likely to be a bad scout if he is engaged in scouting. The young prince's son said. That is possible. Therefore, if the scout is of good character, investigate his findings. Go and have a look? No. That's too complicated. But ask the spotters to come up with evidence. For example, suppose he discovers a big mountain, ask him to bring in some big rocks. The geographer suddenly got busy. Just so, you've come from far away. You're a scout. You come and tell me about your planet. So the geographer, who had already opened his register, sharpened his pencil. He began by writing down in pencil the explorer's account and then waited until the explorer had presented his evidence before noting it down in ink. Well, the geographer inquired. Ah, my place, said the little prince, is not very interesting, it is small. I have 3 volcanoes. 2 are active and 1 is extinguished. But it is hard to say. It's hard to say, the geographer said. I also have a flower. We don't keep track of flowers, the geographer said. That's why. Flowers are the most beautiful things. Because flowers are ephemeral. What do you mean by ephemeral? Geography books are the most serious of all books. The geographer said, these kinds of books never out of date. It rarely happens that a mountain changes its position, rarely that an ocean dries up. We want to write about timeless things. But an extinguished volcano may also come back to life. The young prince interrupted the geographer. What do you mean by short-lived? Whether a volcano is extinguished or awakened, it's all the same thing to us people. The geographer said, what matters to us is the mountain. Mountains don't change position. But what does ephemeral mean? The young prince asked again and again. Once he asked a question. was never spared. It means, there is a danger that it will soon be gone. Is my flower going to disappear soon? Then of course. The little prince said to himself, my flower is ephemeral, and she has only 4 thorns to defend herself against external insults. But I still leave her alone at home. This was the first time he had felt regret, but he regained his composure and said, would you be able to suggest something for me to see? The young prince asked. The planet Earth, the geographer replied to him, is very prestigious. So the little prince went away, thinking of his flowers as he went. The 7th planet, then, was Earth. Earth is no ordinary planet. It has on it 111 kings, without, of course, leaving out black kings, 7,000 geographers, 900,000 industrialists, 7.5 million drunkards, 301 million vain lovers, that is to say, about 2 billion adults. To give you an idea of the size of the Earth, I want to tell you that before the invention of electricity, on 6 continents, it was necessary to maintain a real army of 462,511 people in order to light the street lamps. A large army. From a little distance, it gives the impression of magnificent splendor. This army moves like. The movements of this army were as methodical as the ballet movements of an opera house. First to appear were the New Zealand and Australian lamplighters. The lamplighters. The lights were lit and then they went to bed. Then it was the turn of the Chinese and Siberian lamplighters to come on stage. On stage. Then they too went behind the curtain. Then it was the turn of the Russian and Indian lamplighters. Then it was the turn of the Russian and Indian lamplighters. Then it was Africa and Europe. Then came the South American ones, and then the North American ones. They never get the order of their appearance wrong. It's remarkable. There is only one street lamp at the North Pole and one at the South Pole. Only the lamplighter at the North Pole and his counterpart at the South Pole lead an idle, lazy life. They only work twice a year. When people want to be playful, they can be less than truthful. In telling you about the lamplighters, I am not so faithful when I tell you about the lamplighters, and I am likely to give a wrong idea to people who do not know our planet. The concept of on Earth, people occupy a very small place. If all the 2 billion inhabitants of the planet were to stand up and close together as in a conference, they could comfortably stand in a square 20 nautical miles square. In other words, the entire human race could be concentrated on the smallest island in the Pacific Ocean. Of course, the adults won't believe you. They think they have to take up a lot of space, and they see themselves as big as baobabs. You could suggest that they do some calculations. This will make them very happy. They are very fond of numerals. But you do not need to waste your time with such tedious of arithmetic. It is not necessary. You can trust me completely. The little prince felt very strange when he arrived on Earth. He saw no one, and he was worried that he had gone to the wrong planet. He was worried that he had run away to the wrong planet. Then, on the sand, there was a moonlight-colored circle wriggling. The little prince said, casually and unsurely, "Good night." "Good night." The snake said, "What planet did I land on?" The little prince asked. "On Earth, in Africa." The snake replied. "Ah. Midline horizontal ellipsis. How, does that mean there are no people on Earth?" "This is a desert, and there are no people in the desert. The Earth is big." The snake said. The little prince sat down on a rock, looked up at the sky, and said, "I catch whether these stars are shining brightly so that each person may one day find his or her way back to planet. Look, my planet. It is just above us, but it is so far away. It is beautiful. The snake said, "What are you doing here?" "I had a problem with a flower." The little prince said. "Ah." The snake said. So they both fell silent. "Where are the people?" The little prince finally opened his mouth again. "It's a bit lonely out there on the desert." "It's just as lonely when you're in a place where there are people," the snake said. The little prince looked at the snake for a long time. "You're a strange creature, thin as a finger," the little prince finally said. "But I am more powerful than the finger of a king," the snake said. The little prince smiled and said, "You are not so powerful, you don't even have feet, you can't even travel. I can take you farther than a boat can go," the snake said. The snake was coiled around the little prince's ankle, like a golden bracelet. "The one I touch, I will send back to his old home," the snake added, "but you are pure, and have come from another planet." The little prince answered nothing. "I pity you for being so weak on this granite earth. If you miss your planet, I can help you then." "I can." "Ah." "I understand you very well," said the little prince, "but why do you always talk as if you were asking people to guess riddles?" "I can solve all these riddles," said the snake. So they were both silent again. The little prince crossed the desert. He had only seen one flower, a flower with 3 petals, a small, insignificant flower. "Hello," the little prince said. "Hello," the flower said. "Where are the people?" the little prince asked politely. One day Hannah had seen a caravan of camels going by. "People? I think there were about 6 or 7 of them, and I saw them a few years ago. But I never knew where to look for them. The wind was blowing them around. They have no roads, which is very inconvenient for them." "It's not convenient for them." "Goodbye," the little prince said. "Goodbye," the flower said. The little prince climbed a high mountain. The mountains he had seen in the past were the 3 volcanoes that were only as high as his knees. And he used the extinguished volcano as a stool. The little prince said to himself, "From this high mountain I can see the whole planet and all the people at a glance." But all he could see were some very sharp cliff faces. "Hello?" the little prince asked tentatively. "Hello, hello, hello?" the echoes were answering. "What are you people?" the young prince asked. "What are you, what are you, what are you?" the echoes replied again. "Please be my friends, I am lonely," he said. "I am lonely. I am lonely. I am lonely," the echo replied again. The little prince thought, "What a strange planet. It's all dry, and sharp and salty, and people have no imagination at all. They just repeat what others say to them. Where I come from, I have a flower. She always speaks first." After a long walk through the desert, the rocks and the snow, the little prince finally found a great road. All great roads lead to places where people live. "Hello, you guys," the little prince said. It was a garden where roses were in full bloom. "Hello," the roses said. The little prince looked at the flowers and they were all the same as the one he had. "What kind of flowers are you?" the little prince asked in amazement. "We are roses," the flowers said. "Ah," the little prince said midline horizontal ellipsis. He felt very unfortunate. The flower he had hit had told him that she was the only one in the whole universe. Flower in the whole universe. And yet, in this garden alone, there were 5,000 of these flowers exactly alike. The little prince said to himself, if she saw this, she would be very annoyed, she would cough even more. She will cough harder and pretend to be dead to avoid being laughed at. Then I have to pretend to nurse her, because if I don't, she'll have to pretend to die in order to avoid the shame. If not, she might actually die in order to embarrass me. Then he added, I thought I had a unique flower, but all I have is an ordinary. The flower. This flower, plus 3 volcanoes as high as my knees, and one of them probably extinguished forever, all this would not make me a great prince. And he lay down in the grass and cried. And sobbed. Just then a fox came running in. Hello. The fox said. Hello. The little prince replied politely. He turned around, but saw nothing. Here I am, under the apple tree. The voice said. Who are you? The little prince said, You are beautiful. I am a fox. The fox said. Come and play with me, suggested the little prince, I am very distressed. I can't play with you, said the fox, I haven't been tamed yet. Ah! I'm so sorry. The little prince said. After a moment's thought, he added, What do you mean by tame? You are not from here. The fox said, What have you come to look for? I have come to find someone. The little prince said, What do you mean by tame? People, said the fox, they have guns, and they hunt, and that's really in the way. The only redeeming feature of them is that they also keep chickens. Are you here to find them? No, said the little prince, I have come to find a friend. What do you mean by tame? It is something that has long been forgotten, said the fox, it means to make a connection. Making a connection? Not a bad point, said the fox. To me you are still just a little boy, like millions of other little boys. I don't need you. And you don't need me either. To you, I am just a fox. I am just a fox to you, like millions of other foxes. But if you tame me, we will be indispensable to each other. You would be the only one in the world for me, and I would be the only one in the world for you. I understand a little. The little prince said, There is a flower, and I think she has tamed me. It is possible. The fox said, Anything is possible to see in the world. Ah, it's not on earth. The little prince said. The fox felt very fishy. On another planet? Yes. On that planet, were there hunters? No. That's interesting. Well, are there chickens? No. There are no 10 perfect ones. The fox said with a sigh. But then the fox brought the subject back. My life is monotonous. I catch chickens, and people catch me. All chickens are the same, and all people are all the same. So I am getting a bit bored. But if you tame me, my life would be cheerful. I will recognize a different kind of footstep. Other footsteps would make me to go underground, but your footsteps will make me come out of my hole like music. Besides, look. Do you see that wheat field over there? I don't eat bread, wheat is of no use to me at all. I am indifferent to wheat fields. I'm indifferent to the wheat fields. And that, what a bummer. But you have golden hair. So, once you've tamed me, it will be very wonderful. The wheat, which is golden, will remind me of you. And, I will even like the sound of the wind blowing the wheat. The fox was silent and looked at the little prince for a long time. Please, tame me, he said. I am very willing. The little prince replied, But I don't have much time. I still have to find friends. friends, and many things to learn. Only things that have been tamed will be known, said the fox. One will no longer have time to know anything at all. They always go to the merchant to buy ready-made things. Because the world does not yet have shops for buying pals. Shops for buying friends, so people don't have friends either. If you want a friend, then tame me. Then what should be done? The little prince said. One should be very patient. The fox replied, at first you sit like this in the grass, a little away from me, slightly away from me. I will look at you out of the corner of my eye, and you must not say anything. Words are a source of misunderstanding. But, every day, you sit closer to me. The next day, the little prince came again. It's better to come at the same time as before. The fox said, let's say you come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then from 3 o'clock onwards, I start to feel happy. The nearer the time, the happier I feel. By 4 o'clock, I will be fidgety, I will find out the price of happiness. But if you come at any time, I don't know when to prepare my mood. There should be a certain ritual. What are rituals? The young prince asked. It is also something that has long been forgotten. The fox said, it is what makes a day different from other days. Different from other days, to make a certain moment different from other moments. Those hunters of mine, for example, have a ritual. They danced every Thursday with the girls of the village. So, Thursday was a wonderful day. I could walk all the way to the vineyard. If the hunters danced all the time and every day was the same, then there would be no more holidays. And so the little prince tamed the fox. When the time for departure was near. Ah, said the fox, I shall cry. It's your fault, said the little prince, I didn't want to give you any pain, but you wanted me to tame you. To tame you. It is so, said the fox. You are going to cry, said the little prince. Of course. The fox said. Then you didn't get anything. I still got a benefit because of the color of the wheat. The fox said. Then he went on to say. Go and see those roses again. You will surely see that the one you have is the only rose in the world. Rose. When you come back to say goodbye to me, I will give you one more secret. So the little prince went to look at the roses again. You are nothing like my rose, you are nothing at all. The little prince said to them. No one has ever tamed you, and you have tamed no one. You are just like my fox used to be. It was then just one fox like millions of others. But I have now made it my friend of mine, so that he is now unique in the world. At this point the roses looked very embarrassed. You are beautiful, but you are empty. The little prince was still saying to them, no one can die for you. No one can die for you. Of course, lo, that rose of mine, a common passerby thought she was just like you all. But she alone is more important than all of you, because she is mine to water. Because she is the one I put in the flower cover. Because she is protected by me in a screen. Because the caterpillars on her body, except for 2 or 3 left behind to turn into butterflies, I have exterminated them. For I have listened to her complaints and her boasts, and sometimes I have listened to her silence. For she is my rose. He went back to the fox. Goodbye. The little prince said. Goodbye. The fox said. Here, this is my secret. It's simple, you can only see with your heart. What is substantial cannot be seen with the eye. What is substantial is invisible with the eye. The little prince repeated this phrase so that he could take it in his mind. It is because you have taken time for your rose that this makes your rose so important. It is, because you took the time for your rose. The little prince repeated again, to make himself remember this. People have forgotten this, said the fox, but you should not forget it. Now you are now responsible for everything you have tamed to the end. You are responsible for your rose. I am responsible for my rose, repeated the little prince. Hello, the young prince said. Hello, the rancher said. What are you doing here? The little prince asked. I sort out the passengers by the packet, 1 packet per 1,000. The rancher said, I dispatch these trains carrying passengers, one moment to the right, the next to the left. At that moment a brightly lit express train, thundering loudly, shook the wrenching room. What a hurry they are in, said the little prince. What are they looking for? The man who drives the locomotive doesn't know himself, the rancher said. So the second train of lighted expresses rumbled past again in the opposite direction. Why are they back again? The young prince asked. They're not the same ones anymore. The rancher said, it's a pair of trains. Aren't they happy where they used to live? People are never happy where they are, either, the rancher said. At that moment, a third brightly lit express train rumbled by again. Are they following the first travelers? The young prince asked. They're not following anything, the rancher said. They are sleeping inside or yawning. Only. There are children with their noses pressed against the glass windows looking out. Only the children know what they are looking for themselves. The little prince said, they spend a lot of time for a rag doll. They spend so much time on a rag doll that it becomes a very important thing, and if someone takes it away from them, they cry. They cry. They are so lucky, said the rancher. Hello, the little prince said. Hello, the merchant said. This was a merchant who sold refined pills that could quench thirst. If you swallowed 1 pill a week, you would not feel thirsty. Why are you selling this? The young prince said. It saves a great deal of time. The merchant said, the experts have calculated that this way, each week, you can save about 53 minutes. So, what do you do with those 53 minutes? Whatever you want to use them for. Midline horizontal ellipsis dot. The little prince said to himself, if I had 53 minutes at my disposal, I'd just wander off to the water. To the spring. It was the 8th day since I had my accident on the desert. I listened to the story about the trader and finished my last drop of water that had been spare. Ah! I said to the little prince, these are beautiful stories you recall. But I have not yet repaired But I haven't fixed my plane. I have nothing to drink, and if I could walk leisurely to the fountain, I would be very happy too. I would be happy too. The little prince said to me, my friend the fox. My little one, what foxes now? Why? Because it's about to die of thirst. Not understanding my train of thought, he answered me. Even if you're going to die, it's good to have had a friend. I'm glad that I had a fox friend. I'm glad. He was reckless of the danger. I mused to myself, he never knew hunger or thirst. As long as there's a bit of sunshine, was satisfied. He looked at me and replied to my thought. I'm thirsty too, let's go and find a well. I look bored, it's absurd to go blindly looking for a well in the middle of the desert. But we, nevertheless, set off in search of it. After we had been walking in silence for several hours, it became dark and the stars began to shine. Due to thirst, I had a little fever and I looked at the stars as if I were dreaming. The words of the little prince were dancing in my head. jumping around. "Are you thirsty too?" I asked him. But he didn't answer my question, he just said to me, "Water is good for the heart too." I don't understand what he means, but I don't say anything. I know better than to ask him. He was tired and he sat down. I sat down beside him. After a moment of silence, he said again, "The stars are beautiful because there is a flower that people don't see." I replied, "Of course." And I looked silently at the folds of the desert in the moonlight. "The desert is beautiful." He said again, "Indeed it is. I've always loved the desert. Sitting on a sand dune, seeing and hearing nothing. But there is something indescribable that silently shines. What makes the desert more beautiful is that somewhere, in the corner, there is a well." I was amazed and suddenly understood why the desert shone. When I was a little boy, I lived in an old house and, according to legend, there was a treasure buried in it. Of course, no one ever found this treasure, and probably no one ever even looked for it. But this treasure made the whole house was enchanted. My house hides a secret deep in its heart. I said to the little prince, "Yes, whether it's the house, the stars, or the desert, what makes them beautiful is invisible." I am so glad that you share my fox's opinion. The little prince said. The little prince went to sleep, so I took him in my arms and got back on the road again. I was so excited. It was like holding a fragile baby. It was as if there was nothing more fragile on earth. I looked into the moonlight and saw the ghastly white face, these closed eyes, these locks of hair that fluttered in the wind, and I said to myself, what I see is just the outside. What I see is only the exterior. The most important thing is the invisible. As I saw a small smile on his slightly open lips, I said to myself, in this sleeping little prince, I have made the most of my life. What touches me so much in this little sleeping prince is his devotion to his flower, the image of the rose that shines in his heart. The image of the rose that shone in his heart. This rose, even when the little prince was asleep, shone on him like the flame of a lamp. Flame shining brightly in him. At this point, I felt even more vulnerable that the flame of the lamp should be protected, a gust of wind might blow it out. And so, walking on, I found the well at dawn. The people, they crowded towards the express train, but they didn't know what they were looking for. So they go about their business, going back and forth in circles," said the little prince. He then said, "It's not necessary." The well we finally found was different from those in the Sahara. The Saharan wells were just holes dug in the desert. This well was like a well in a village. But there wasn't any village, so I thought I was dreaming. "It's strange," I said to the little prince, "everything is ready-made, the windlass, the bucket, the rope." He laughed, took the rope and turned the windlass. The windlass creaked like an old windlass that had not been blown by the wind for a long time. "Listen," said the little prince, "we have awakened the well, and now it sings." I didn't want him to bother. I said to him, "Let me do it. It's too heavy a job for you." I slowly lifted the bucket over the well rail. I placed it firmly there. My ears were still ringing from the reel. The song of the windlass. I could see the sun's shadow pulsing on the still swaying water. "I am in need of a drink of this water." The little prince said, "Give me some." And that's when I realized what he was looking for. I held the bucket up to his mouth. He drank with his eyes closed. It was as pleasant as a holiday. This water is far more Far from being just a drink, it had been found by walking many miles under the stars, by the song of the windlass, by the. I had to work my arms to get it. It was like a gift to soothe the heart. When I was a child, the lights of the Christmas tree. The light of the Christmas tree, the music of the midnight mass, the sweet smiles, all these things made the gift I received at Christmas glow with. The glow of happiness. You have people here who grow 5,000 roses in the same garden. The little prince said, but they cannot find in them what they are looking for. They can't find it. I replied. But what they are looking for can be found in a rose or in a bit of water. A little. I replied. The little prince added. The eye can see nothing. One should look with the heart. I drank the water. I breathed in the air, painfully. The desert glowed with honey in the morning sun. This honey-like. It also made me happy. Why should I be sad? The little prince sat down again beside me. He said to me gently, you should keep your promise. What promise? You know, to give my lamb a mouthpiece. I'm responsible for my flowers. I took my drawing out of my pocket. The little prince saw it and said with a smile. Your drawing of a baobab tree is a bit like a cabbage. Ah! And I was proud of my baobab. Your fox, its ears, are a bit like horns, and they're too long. At this point, he laughed again. You're not being fair, little one. I used to draw pythons with open bellies and closed bellies. Ah! That'll do. He said, the children recognize it. So I sketched a mouthpiece in pencil. As I handed it to the little prince, I was overcome with emotion. I don't know anything about your intentions midline horizontal ellipsis. But he didn't answer me, he said to me. You know, I landed on Earth, and tomorrow will be the first anniversary. Then, after a moment of silence, he added. I landed right here. At this point, his cheeks were flushed. I felt, for some reason, a pang of inexplicable sorrow. At this point, a question arose. A week ago, the morning I met you, you were walking alone in the middle of nowhere. A week ago, the morning I met you, you were walking alone in this deserted place, so it wasn't a coincidence? You were going back to the place where you landed, weren't you? The little prince's face flushed again. I added hesitantly. Maybe it's the anniversary? Midline horizontal ellipsis dot. The little prince blushed again. He never answers these questions, but to blush is to say yes, right? Right? Ah! I said to him, I'm a bit scared. But he answered me. You should be working now. You should go back to your machine. I'll wait for you here. You can come back tomorrow night. Come back in the morning. But I was relieved. I remembered the fox's words. If you're tamed, you might have to cry. Next to the well was a crumbling stone wall. When I returned from work the next evening, I saw from a distance the little prince sitting on the wall with his legs hanging down. I heard him speak. Why don't you remember? He said, it's never here. There was probably another voice answering him, for he replied. Yes, yes, the day is right, but the place is not here. I continued to walk towards the wall. I still couldn't see or hear anyone else. But the little prince answered again. Then of course. You will see in the sand where my footprints begin. You will wait there. I will be fine. I will go there this night. I was about 20 meters from the wall, but I still didn't see anything. The little prince was silent for a while and then said, Does your venom work? Do you promise not to make me suffer for a long time? Anxiously, I caught up with him, but I still didn't understand what was going on. Now you go on, I'm coming down. Midline horizontal ellipsis dot, said the little prince. So I too looked towards the foot of the wall, and I was startled. There it was, a yellow snake straight up and rushing at the little prince. A yellow snake like that can kill you in half a minute. I dug into my pocket and drew my pistol, and I ran over to him. But at the sound of my footsteps, the snake slowly dug into the sand like a dried-up column of water. The snake went into the sand. It moved unhurriedly through the cracks in the stones, making a soft metallic sound. I reached the wall just in time to catch this little prince of mine in my arms. His face was as white as snow. Kind of ghastly white. What's this nonsense? How can you even talk to a snake? I untied the golden scarf he had been wearing. The golden scarf he had been wearing. I wet his temples with water and made him drink some of it. At this point, I didn't dare ask him anything else. He looked at me solemnly and put his arms around my neck. I felt his heart like that of a. I felt his heart beating like the heart of a bird that had been shot and was on the verge of death. He said to me, "I'm glad you found what your machine was missing. You'll be able to go home soon." How do you know? I had come precisely to tell him that I had managed to complete the repair work without any hope. Instead of answering my question, he continued. I, too, am going home today. Then, sadly, he said, I'm going home much further, much harder. It was clear to me that something unusual was happening. I held him tightly in my arms as if he were a child. But I felt him sinking straight down into a bottomless abyss, and I tried to pull him back, but I couldn't. I couldn't. His eyes were serious, looking away. I have the sheep you drew, the sheep's box and the sheep's muzzle. He smiled with a sad look. I waited a long time before I felt his body grow warm. Little one, you are frightened. He was scared, there was no doubt about it. But he smiled gently and said, Tonight, I'll be even more scared. I realized once again that something irreparable was about to happen. I felt my heart go cold all of a sudden. That's when I realized I couldn't bear the thought of never hearing that laugh again. The sound of this laughter was to me like a sweet spring in the desert. Little one, I still want to hear you laugh. But he said to me, by this night, it will be exactly 1 year. My planet will be exactly where I landed last year. Little man, the snake thing, the date thing, the stars, it's all a nightmare, isn't it? But he didn't answer my question. He said to me, the important thing is not to see. Of course. It's like a flower. If you fall in love with a flower that grows on a star, then at night, you look at the sky and feel sweet and happy. All the stars seem to have flowers on them. Of course. It's like water, too, because of the windlass and the rope. The well water you gave me to drink was like music. Do you remember? Midline horizontal ellipsis, it was very good. Of course. At night, you looked up at the stars, and mine was too small for me to show you where mine. Where it is. It's better this way. You can think that my star is among the stars. Then, you will like to see all the stars, they will all be your friends. And I'm going to give you a gift. He laughed again. Ah! Little one, I love to hear you laugh. That's my gift to you, it's like water. What are you talking about? The stars are not all the same to people's eyes. For those who travel, the stars are guides. For others. To others, the stars are just little lights. For other scholars, the stars are the learning they explore. For me. For the industrialist I met, the stars are money. But all these stars do not speak. And you. Those stars of yours will be like no one has ever had. What are you talking about? At night, when you look at the sky, since I live on one of the stars, since I am smiling on one of the stars laughing, then to you it is as if all the stars were laughing, and then you will see the star is the star that laughs. At this, he laughed again. Then, after you have been comforted, people always comfort themselves. You will be happy for having known me and feel happy. You will always be my friend. You will then want to laugh with me. Sometimes you will open the window for be happy and unknowingly open the window. Your friends will look at you strangely as you laugh and look up at the sky. At that time, you can say to them, yes, the stars always make me laugh. They'll think you're crazy. My pranks will embarrass you. At that, he laughed again. It's as if I didn't give you stars, but a bunch of little bells that make you laugh. He was still laughing. Then he became serious. Tonight, don't come. I'm not leaving you. I'm going to look like I'm in pain. I'm going to look like I'm going to die. That's what's going on, so don't come to see this, there's no need. I'm not leaving you. But he got worried. I'm saying this to you, it's because of the snake too. Don't let it bite you, snakes are very bad, they bite at will. It bites at will. I'm not leaving you. At this point, he seemed a little relieved. By the way, it doesn't have any venom when it bites the second time. That night, I didn't see him get up. He ran off without a word. When I finally caught up with him, he was walking at a determined, fast pace. He simply said to me, "Ah, there you are." And he took my hand. But he was still worried. You shouldn't be like this. You're going to feel bad. I'll look like I'm dying, but it can't be true. I was silent. You understand, it's a long way. I can't carry this body with me. It's too heavy. I remained silent. But it's like old bark that peels off. There's nothing sad about old bark. I was still silent. He was a little deflated. But he perked up again. It would be quite nice, I'll be sure to look at the stars too. All the stars will be with Rusty. A well with a rusty windlass. All the stars will pour water for me to drink. I remained silent. What fun it will be. You will have 500 million bells and I will have 500 million wells. At this point, he was silent too, because he was crying. This is the place. Let me take a step by myself. He sat down at this point, for he was afraid. But he still said, my flower. I am responsible for her. And she's so weak. She's so naive. She's so naive. She has only 4 insignificant thorns to protect herself against foreign enemies. I sat down too, because I couldn't stand any longer. He said, "That's it, all of it." He hesitated for a moment, then stood up. He took a step. And I couldn't move. There was a flash of yellow light near his ankle bone. In a flash, he didn't move. He didn't scream. He fell gently to the ground like a tree, probably because of the sand, without even a sound. There was no sound. It's been 6 years now, and I've never told the story. My companions saw me again. They were all happy to see me back alive. But I was sad. I told them, it's because of fatigue. Now I'm a little more comforted. That is to say, it's not completely calm. But I know that he has gone back to his planet. Because I didn't see his body again that dawn. His body wasn't so heavy. Since then, I've loved listening to the stars at night, as if I were listening to 500 million bells. But now something unusual has happened. The little prince's mouth I drew for him, and I forgot to draw a belt. He can no longer put it over the sheep's mouth. So I thought, what's happening on his planet? Probably the lamb ate the flowers. And sometimes I say to myself, no way. The little prince covers his flowers with a glass cover every night. The little prince covers his flowers with a glass cover every night, and he keeps an eye on the sheep. I was very happy to think of that. At that moment, all the stars were laughing softly and softly. Suddenly I said to myself, people are inevitably negligent sometimes, and that's enough. One night, he forgets the glass cover, or the lamb comes out unannounced in the night. And the little bells turn into teardrops. It's a great mystery. For those of you who love the little prince, as it is for me. It is a great mystery to you who love the little prince, as it is to me, that wherever, somewhere, if a sheep, though we don't know it, eats a rose, or did not eat a rose, then the universe looks completely different. You look at the sky. Think about it, did the sheep eat or not eat the flower? Then you will see that everything is different. No grown-up will ever understand how important this question is. For me, this is the most beautiful and the most poignant place in the world. It is the same place as the previous page. It's the same place as the previous page. I have drawn it again so that you can see it clearly. It is here that the little prince appears on. It is here that the little prince appeared on Earth and later disappeared. Please take a good look at this place so that you can. You will be able to identify this place accurately when you travel to the African desert one day. If you have the opportunity to pass by this place, I ask you not to pass by in haste, but to wait just under that star. If at that moment a little child comes towards you, if he smiles, if he has golden hair, if when you ask him, if he doesn't answer when you ask him a question, you will be able to guess who he is. Then do yourselves a favor and don't make me so sad. Do me a favor and don't make me so sad, write to me quickly and tell me that he is back,